All right, welcome to ISO Buddies. I hope you are not confused. It's just me. You have to like the hair clips. My daughter did my hair tonight, so I have the hair clips in. She wanted me to have blue because it matches my shirt, and I'm a daddy. Daddies need blue. We've got a special guest for you tonight. We have Brandi Larson-Lowe from Rhactastic Rhacs. I put the link in chat. I hope you can still see it. It's literally rhactasticrhacs.com, so I'll post it again at the end for anybody who missed it. I have our Facebook link in there too if anybody wants to log on there and do our chat afterwards for ISO Buddies on Facebook. Let's see. So our unsponsored today, I got this great water bottle that I thought you'd be able to see the logo from. Am I bugging you? But then I filled it with urine. No, Green River, which is kind of the same thing, to kind of fuel me through the show. But this is from Am I Bugging You? You'll find her on Facebook as well. Just search Am I Bugging You? She has roaches, isopods, all kinds of great stuff for sale. Water bottles. I don't know what she charges for the water bottles, to be honest. I haven't seen them on her site. And I mentioned Green River is also an unsponsor. Don't sue me, Green River. So Brandi's here. It's my first solo show. Bear with me. It might be a little awkward, but we're going to work through it. Brandi's going to talk about Crested Geckos primarily. She's known as a Crested Gecko breeder. She has some great stuff that I saw on her site over the past few months, actually. But what I was most interested in is the Extreme Harlequin. I really like that color patterning, and when they flare up, they're amazing. So let's get right to it. Let's bring Brandi in. Brandi, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
I am going to kind of try to put you on a bigger screen than me so that when we see the geckos, we can see them better. Is that fair?
Sounds good.
All right. Pardon the hummels in the background. Brandi is broadcasting from her grandma's house. So better Wi-Fi.
I live in a town with a population of less than 200. We're lucky we get satellite internet.
I was down your way today. I got my second vaccine in Moni.
Oh, did you?
So I was kind of by you guys, like halfway probably.
Yeah, Moni's probably, it's around 40, 45 minutes.
Oh, so I think I kind of crisscrossed. Weird triangle. So, because we're in Joliet, so it probably would have been easier to just get down to Kankakee. So, welcome to the show. We are going to start off by asking, so what initially got you into the hobby? What initially got you into keeping crested geckos?
Well, it originally started, my little cousin was bugging me at the store for a leopard gecko.
Okay.
And we got the leopard, and then the leopard gecko didn't make it because we didn't know at the time he was impacted. And so then we decided to maybe try crested. We thought about it, and actually a friend of mine was getting rid of one.
Okay.
And didn't want him anymore. So I originally got him to rehouse because we weren't set up. We weren't ready at the time for a crested gecko. Once I started doing more research on it, and I seen all these different color varieties, and we got him set up in his little tank, I decided that, well, maybe these cresteds aren't so bad. So then another friend of mine was breeding crested geckos at the time, and I contacted him, and I was asking him questions, and got a couple more from him. And then next thing you know, we're where we are today. It really, if you would have told me this back then, I would have never believed you.
Yeah, you were saying before the show, you were at one point getting about 500 geckos a season, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, we were probably about 5-6 years ago. We were real well known. We were real big into the community and pumping them out like crazy. The last few years have been pretty rough. We had a house fire, and but thanks to the community, the reptile community, we were able to, thank God, we were able to get a roof over our heads. We were able to get supplies that we needed and recover. So the seasons since have been a little slow, but.
Yeah, did you lose a lot of your stock in that fire? I didn't ask you that before.
Well, actually, my husband was the chief firefighter. The assistant chief for a neighboring fire department. I mean, he was actually supposed to be at the department at the time. And I had gone to bed early, and he said, "Do you smell something?" And I thought he was just BSing because he's like, "The house is on fire." And I go, uh-huh. And he was like, no, the house is on fire. Get up, the house.
You thought he was running like a fire drill to make sure, I don't want to run out of the artist.
I like turn over and I look at him. I'm like, yeah, okay. And he's like, no, I'm not kidding. The house is on fire. So we were trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. It was January. It was one of the coldest days. The ice.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
the middle of an ice storm.
Okay.
So we're smelling it, but we can't figure out where. We see that the attic, it's coming from the kitchen. We look up. He opens it up, and sure enough, there's a fire in the attic. So we call 911. He rushes to the neighboring fire department he calls in his guys beforehand, and he's getting ready to come on the way. The house is starting to fill up with smoke. So I hurry up and I open the door, and I let all the dogs run out. We lived on a couple 100 acres, so I wasn't really worried that they were going to go too far. Our pet pig, we opened up the door. I was grabbing all the geckos into whatever container I could, and I was just getting them out of their cages as fast as I could. It got to the point where when they came there, they made me get out. My lungs, they burned. My eyes burned.
Oh my gosh.
So all I could do was sit in the car and pray that the rest of them would be okay. And thankfully, being my husband was on the fire department, while they were worried about getting the fire in check, he was going in and he was getting the geckos that were still in there out.
I can see him in a full suit with the oxygen mask and the whole thing, and like shoveling geckos in the trash can.
He's trying to get the geckos out, and it's so cold. We're all in the car huddled up, and then thankfully his sister lived a couple miles down the road, so I had drove the geckos down to her house.
Okay.
We got the all clear. The house was soaked, the whole upstairs. What had happened was the power line coming into the house in the attic, the ice got so heavy that it actually was pulling on, and it started an electrical fire.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say like some animal was up there and chewed on it or something.
It was terrible. Like it was such a shock when it happened, and they ran the thermal tick. They gave it the all clear. The power was out. So we took a few of our dogs to his sister's house, and then we had a couple strays. The neighboring town, they like to dump stray dogs, so we would bring them in when it was cold to try to find them a home. And we had a couple strays, and we just made them warm in the basement. And I couldn't find anywhere to take my pet pig the last second, so we made her a nice bed, and we figured we'd deal with it in the morning, because this was pretty late at night when this all took place. So went to my parents' house, and then we got the next call that the house started back on fire, and we lost everything in that one.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, but the geckos thankfully were okay. But the dogs that were still in there, and Ziggy the piggy, and we did end up losing.
We usually hold the questions for the end, but we're on a tangent already. So Wally wants to know if the insurance maybe covered some of that for your hobby business.
We didn't have insurance. We were renting at the time, and we didn't have insurance. But the community, the gecko community, the reptile community, I should say. They all held a charity auction for us, and we were able to get enclosures and a roof over our head and everything.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
It was amazing. The community is an amazing community to be a part of.
I've seen the isopod community come together to help people that have gone through losses in a much smaller sense. But I've seen that in the hobbies, like people build such strong friendships and relationships.
Yeah, it's amazing how everybody.
Yeah, and I've seen it trying to do this cross-platform hobby thing. I've seen it over and over. People just want to share their knowledge and want to share their experience. So speaking of knowledge and experience, let's get back on topic. Okay, so that is a great story. That I wanted to get that out there because it is such a great story, and it's powerful that you came back. Wally commented too. He said, "Way to keep going and keep your chin up," because that would crush a lot of people and get them almost out of the hobby. So it's awesome that you came back and recovered from that. That's amazing. So big ups, big props. When did you first? Back in the day, you started in 2007. You said.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you got your first gecko, or is that when you started breeding?
We started breeding late 2007. So we did get our first gecko. It probably was towards the beginning of 2007, late 2006. But our first breeding endeavor took place in late 2007.
Okay. All right. And then, so let's get into the breeding questions. So when you're setting up a breeding enclosure, like I, and probably a lot of my listeners know very little about breeding geckos. I know we have Wally Kern on the channel right now who could argue with that. Wally knows a little bit about breeding Cresteds. I have heard they're one of the easiest to breed. They're definitely one of the easiest to care for, as they don't need like any real heat source, no special lighting. They're room temperature geckos. They eat a powder format food. Like they're super easy.
They are definitely the easiest.
Are they easy to breed as well?
Yeah, for the most part. A breeding setup, and I know I got all the isopods, but I'll be honest with you, I literally have one bioactive enclosure. The rest of them,
okay.
I know. But the rest of them I keep on paper towel. It's easier for breeding purposes.
Sure.
I keep them with a little lay box. Basically, what I do is I mix cocoa fiber with long fiber sphagnum, and I keep it damp inside just a little Rubbermaid container, tiny little thing, just enough for them to get inside and dig.
I've seen them like a little Tupperware with the hole cut in the top. Like that. Okay.
Yep. It's
right.
pretty cool. They go in, and then there's different medias. Once they lay the eggs, you have different options. A lot of people want to know what kind of incubator I have. Well, the thing with Crested Gecko eggs is you don't need incubation. As far as temperature wise, room temperature, and they'll hatch perfectly fine.
So now room temperature for you is you're talking, that's different for other people. Like in my house, it's like 70 is our room temperature. So what are you talking about?
Well, actually anywhere from 68 all the way up to 78. They'll hatch as low as 68. I like to keep it, the lower the temperature, the longer they take to hatch, but they're a lot stockier. They're a lot hardier. A lot of times they have better structure. They're just a lot better, more robust animals when you incubate them at lower temperatures. And I average, it takes about 120 days-ish around there for them once they are laid to hatch. And I try to keep them around 70 to 72. The problem when you get to the too high temperatures is you'll have premature hatchlings, or you'll have geckos that literally are, I mean, they're super tiny. They take forever to go. They never seem to really thrive, like if you would have just take the time out and let them hatch at the lower temperatures.
That's good to see, because you hear about breeders, like I don't know anybody who does this, but you hear about breeders just cranking them out. Like they just want those numbers.
That's another thing too. A lot of breeders, they pump them up and get them big enough just to start shooting the babies out. That happened a lot when the Lily exotics were first here. Everybody wanted to be the first one. Hurry up, pump them up, and get them bred. The big thing when you do that is they might be the size, but they're not really to the point where they should be. I like to wait till they're 2 years. I would say a year and a half would be the absolute minimum. There's some that I wait 3 years for.
So you're talking like this is not a cranking them out. This is like you get a good season. Do they breed like once a year, or what's the deal?
Well, they'll retain sperm, so you can do one breeding and it'll last them for the season. Usually a season is about, depending on when you pair them, anywhere from 5 to 7 consecutive months. And they'll lay 2 eggs each clutch. So you're looking on the
like 2 per month. You're talking like 2 per month.
Usually. It all varies. I find that most of them take about 6 weeks. Some of them will do a month, but most of them it's about 5-6 weeks before they're shooting out their next batch.
So 5-6 weeks to lay 2 eggs. Those 2 eggs take 120 days to hatch, which is that's 4 months, right? Is that the math? Mm-hmm. So 4 months to hatch, and then 2 years from that. So you're looking at almost 3 years from mating to breeding to breeding.
Definitely. There's other breeders who do them younger, but I find it's not worth their health to risk it. So
sure.
2 years minimum, even 3 in some cases. But if you're gonna do, that's another thing with age. They all grow at different rates. So even at 2 or 3 years, if your female is not at least 45 grams, wait until at least she hits 45 grams. That should be your bare minimum.
And can you pack her with more, like what would you pack her with, more protein or to get weight on? Yeah.
To get her to the size, they all have their ranges where they'll grow slower, especially in cooler climates. They grow a lot slower than those down south. Most of the ones that are slow growers aren't particularly fond of their bugs. There's some that they'll stick their noses up to it on feeding day, on bug feeding day. Those are usually your slower growers.
Yeah. Mine doesn't care unless it's in the mix. Like I feed Pangea, and so they have that fig. The one that I've used is the fig with the insects in it, and he loves that. That's his go-to. But he's not, even with tongs, leaving them in there. I have a special cup. No, they'll just die in that cup. Like he does not.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times. A lot of geckos are like that, and that's why they're more on the slower side to grow.
Okay, so you want to pack them with some other form of protein, like some other source.
And then once you have your first batch of eggs, you're gonna need to put them in the media. You can use vermiculite. You can use perlite. There's a clay. It's mostly used in the bonsai. I prefer to use that because you want to keep the moisture into the little deli cup that you got your eggs in. And the difference is when it's dry, it's more of like this light.
Oh, you brought it with. Awesome.
Yep. And then that's when you know it's wet. So when it starts to dry out and get this color, you're going to want to add water because you want it to stay this color at all times.
Okay. And you just pour water in, or how do you?
Yeah.
Like I know.
Just make sure you don't get it on the egg. But yeah, just a little bit, a little bit. Yeah.
Just down the side or whatever. I just learned that trick for my my clue guy, but I think it's a little too late. My clowns.
Oh.
They're not. I never had luck with them, but that's a story for another time. Yeah, I think I've mentioned it every episode. Everything else that I have has bred. Every other isopod I've had has bred at least once. But I've not. I've been through 3 batches and I've never gotten them to breed.
I wonder if they're seasonal because I'll have an explosion of them, and then next thing I know, there's no babies until their next explosion.
That's so weird. So now, speaking of seasonal, so now are crested seasonal, or can you like fudge those? Like I know with frogs, like you can make a rain chamber or whatever and kind of force it on them. Or trick them into being like, oh, it's breeding season, let's go.
Yeah, you can do that with cresteds. The 2 key things to trigger them and getting them into breeding is the amount of light. So you can put a light on a timer. And the temperature. So when the temperature's around 75-ish is the perfect range. You don't want to get higher than 78 because once they hit to the 80, they can. You might have even fatalities. So you want to keep them around 75 to 78-ish will trigger, and then the prolonged light. But I noticed the light seems to be the most important thing. You can still get them to breed at cooler temperatures as long as you have that light cycle. Okay.
All right. That's awesome to know. So, and you want that longer light cycle. So they think it's like summertime.
Right. You want to slowly bring them into it. So set your timer for an extra hour for a week or 2, then prolong it another hour, et cetera, et cetera.
Now these guys are kind of from like a mountainous region, right?
They're from a subtropical region of New Caledonia. So these guys, a big controversy with them is everybody thinks they're tropical animals, and they're not. And the big thing that I noticed is a problem with the new keepers is they keep them too humid. And actually, I've seen more issues with keeping them at too high humidity than too low of humidity. They put them in bin setups and they poke a couple holes and they think they're good. They need a lot of ventilation. They can come down with respiratory issues, bacterial infections when they're kept too moist. These guys, while they do enjoy a mist once or twice a day, they need a dry out period too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my guy gets it like twice a day. So, and he's in the screen. So I'm hoping he's good. I wanted to get him some ladies, but I think I changed my mind on that. But
well, if what else? You know where to go.
I do know where to go. No offense, Wally. No offense. So let's see some of yours that you've produced. You said you brought some of the crested geckos with you, right?
Yep. This is one of my top males. And he's actually the offspring of the pair that made me famous, Blaze and Missy. This is, I don't know if you can see him. This is Payday.
Payday?
Yeah, because as soon as he hit, he was like my payday.
Yeah, for sure. Did you know like immediately when he hatched, or basically when
I
do you
knew
know?
immediately. But I'll be honest with you, if it was closer in the beginning of my breeding endeavor,
He's not cooperating at all.
He's not happy.
Is that the spaz? Is that the one you said is a spaz?
He's been in the container for a little bit, so he's not too thrilled right now.
Okay, all right.
And I took him away from his ladies for this.
Oh God! All right, so we got that. We had a horny snake last week, so.
Yeah, he normally.
Okay, there we go.
There's. And
Oh, he's handsome.
He came out of Blaze and Missy, which they're pretty well-known pairing.
Okay.
When he first hatched, just knowing how, for the past few years, how the babies developed, because they are very slow to develop line.
Okay.
I knew as soon as he hatched that I hit the payday. Like, that was my payday. So
that's awesome. So you don't have to wait for these guys to develop. Like, you're going to see their coloring and their patterning immediately.
You do. Like, but if you do it for long enough, your eye is trained and you could see the potential in a baby fresh out of the egg. But I will say this. There are many that I still kick myself in the butt today that I didn't see the potential in, and I sold, and they ended up being dynamite.
Just gorgeous. Yeah, some of them I've seen are just, the variations now are so crazy. Do you have a couple more? Do you have a couple more? Like,
sure.
Payday is really great.
This is Payday's daughter.
Okay, now Payday's an extreme Harley, right? Harlequin? Yes. Okay.
And then this is, he's actually red, but he's not fired up right now. This is his daughter.
What differentiates a Harlequin? Like what?
The pattern. Harlequin has a lot lower pattern, and the extreme actually goes up, touches the dorsum.
Okay.
And you'll see this is a real like extreme. There are some extremes that don't have this amount of pattern, but
okay.
So this is a darker.
This is Payday's daughter. All right.
Yeah. This is Blindside.
Blindside. I love that they still have their tails too. That's just. Whenever I've gotten 2 rescues and neither of them had their tails, and it was like, oh man, I know it's hard to kind of keep them on there.
I'll tell you what, my favorite curtain call, I didn't bring her today because she's in breeding, but she made it through all the chaos of the fire. She was in a container for 2 days before we can get her to her final resting enclosure. And right when I was taking her out of the little enclosure to the big one, she shot her tail on me after all that.
Oh. She made it through all that stress and was finally like, I can't handle any more change.
Yep, that was. And then this is a big guy. This is
wow.
He's one of my new breeders. I just acquired him.
What's he weighing in at? Like what kind of grammage?
I think he's 62.
Oh, wow. Okay. And the females, you said minimum 45, right?
Yeah.
Is there a minimum on the males? Because it's not as much stress on the males, right?
It's not as much stress on a male, but I personally wouldn't breed a male under 40 grams. That's a personal preference. Back when I started, it was 30 for males and 35 for females. So at least we came a long way when it comes to our breeding sizes. But
I noticed that all of these hobbies just keep evolving. So
that one's Avalanche, and those are our extremes for the night.
Now, what is what did you say got popular? Did you call it exotic lily?
Lily Exotics.
Lily Exotics.
They produced a gecko called a Lily White. It's actually technically Crested Geckos only have a couple known morphs. The Lily Whites is one of them. Exantix is another. But I don't have any here, but they have they're very distinctive. They have a really bright paper white on them.
Okay.
And in the beginning, they're roughly new to the market. I would say the last five years is when they start coming into the US. They're imported from Europe.
Okay.
But they're they're one of the nicer morphs out there, the more expensive morphs. Not to say
I definitely saw that. Yeah, I was kind of looking.
Not to say that you can't get expensive regular one, like one like this.
Yeah,
It's gonna set you back around $5,000.
$5,000?
Yeah.
What?
Some of them, like some of the lilies will go for anywhere from, I've seen them as low as $650, and I've seen them as high as $10,000. So that's the thing with Cresteds. You can have an extreme Harlequin worth $50, and you can have an extreme Harlequin worth $5,000. It's just
like, I'm not doubting your pricing. Like, that's everybody I've met is totally fair in their pricing, but that just blows my mind. Like,
most of the expensive ones are exported out of the country. Most of them are in Korea.
Okay.
The Korean market's really hot right now.
You were saying that earlier. So if I was breeding, how would I sell to the, like, what would I have to do to sell to the Korean market?
Well, actually, a lot of the Korean buyers will contact you, and they already have their broker set up. Everything's already set up. So instead of shipping to somebody in the States, well, I would ship to somebody in the States, and then they would take care of everything, get the animal ready for export, and they would take care of the rest. So
the broker has all that.
Address. Mm-hmm.
As far as permits are concerned, you just need a permit to ship it to the broker. If you need a permit, I don't know how they work.
They just, as far as the permits go,
yeah,
the broker will take care of all of it. I don't need a permit to ship to the broker. The broker's got to have the permit to ship to Korea.
So, so in the U.S., there's not a lot of restrictions on Cresteds, is that?
No, there's not many restrictions whatsoever.
Because I know isopods, like even the normal stuff that we see, we're supposed to have. Did I lose you?
No. Okay. There we go.
Oh, we just lost your camera for a second. They lose me like once an episode, the last 3, so we're hoping that doesn't happen. It's about due. But I know in isopods we have to have we're supposed to have permits to ship outside of our state. But apparently there's only, I saw the list, Grady sent it to me, Flawed Design, who's on right now. There's only like 20 species, or it's pretty broad based, like Scaber's on there, Lavis is on there. I mean, there's so many morphs. But anyway, the permits are a little daunting, but it's cool to know that you don't have to have them. Are there any states that it's illegal to sell them to?
No.
Like Florida, I know Florida's super restricted on stuff, but Florida doesn't care.
No, Florida doesn't care. I could ship to Florida. I could ship to anywhere in the U.S. Except like out of the country, so I couldn't ship to
Canada,
Puerto Rico.
Okay. Which is weird because they're technically America.
Exactly,
right?
They're technically part of the United States, but
I
couldn't ship to Puerto Rico. I could ship to Puerto Rico with a broker. They would have to go through all that, but I couldn't myself.
But you couldn't bring like a bag of them to Puerto Rico and just throw them out like those paper towels to the natives? No? Couldn't do that?
Probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Probably a bad idea. All right, fair. What else did you bring with us? I know you brought a bunch of stuff. So
I brought a couple different other colors of Crested so we could see the difference between.
Awesome. We saw a Harlequin. We saw the Harlequins already.
This is a bicolor.
Okay.
She's red, but the camera's really distorting the coloring on it.
Yeah. So now bicolor, when she fires, I can see it now. Yeah.
Yes. She'll have the red, and then she's got the brown dorsum going through.
Okay.
And she doesn't have any other patterns or any. She does have the they call it phantom pins. I don't know if you could see on the camera going through.
Yeah. Like they're yellow basically.
Yeah, it's basically it blends in the same color as the dorsum.
Okay.
And then for the other ones, let's see.
So now is bicolor a sought after? I noticed she had like no markings on her at all. She's just
the
two
bicolors.
colors.
The only time that there's more sought after is if you have a really, really intense color. If you have that really fire engine red or a real pink color, then they're sought after. But as far as just a regular, like her, she would just be more the mid class. But you could take a bicolor like that and you could pair her with, say, a Harlequin, and you might be able to get the red coloring onto the Harlequin pattern on the male that you're trying to produce. So that's a lot. A lot of the red Harleys today have red bicolor in the bloodlines.
I was gonna say that seems to be Wally Kern's thing. Is his jam is red Harlequins. I wonder if that's how he got it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're still listening, you can answer in chat. So you were saying earlier too that you kind of will see a good male and maybe a good female from a different morph, and maybe go, let's try it. Let's see what happens.
Especially with these guys. I love reds, so I bought her with the intentions because I did like her coloring, even though she's not showing it right now. But to put with one of my cream extreme Harlequins with the goal in mind to get the cream and the heavy pattern from my male and produce her base color with it.
Okay.
And then I got a couple other. I'm not known for my pinstripes, but I do have a few here.
Okay.
Now this
I think it's cool for our watchers, our viewers to see the difference. Like I said, I have a lot of friends personally that tune in. They started tuning in just because they're friends, and now they're interested in learning these things. So this is good for folks like them who are just starting out.
This is now this one. These are really rare still in the hobby. These are called empty backs.
Empty backs?
Yeah, an empty back pinstripe. She's got the highlighted pinstriping, but her dorsum is the same color as her side pattern. So they're called empty backs.
Okay.
No, she's not gonna hold still.
So the pinstripe is basically that the line of the crest that goes down the back, the double line.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's a really cool look.
And then we have Morgan. Where is she? Okay, now this one, she's not happy about being out, but.
Oh yeah, she's not.
This
She's
one,
a big girl.
She's a yellow.
Okay.
And she's got the pinstriping trait.
She looks a lot like my male that I have now. Honestly, he's not as vibrant as she is, but he's got the same kind of patterning.
Yeah, I'm not. My husband's more that he loves all the yellows. I'm more the red. But I think in our entire collection, I think I got a handful of yellows.
Okay.
Most of them are Harlequins, except her. She's the only pinstripe that we got.
Okay. I mean, you only need the one, right, to start it off.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people are going. Basically, the main goal is to pick what you're looking for.
Okay.
If you prefer what more, if you want a Harlequin or if you want a pinstripe, a bicolor, and then do your research. Research what breeders are known for that.
Okay.
See what bloodlines, because a lot of times you'll have the same taste. Oh, I like that animal or that animal. A lot of times there's similarities in the bloodline. So research the bloodline, and even if you don't have a few $1,000s to start on a high-end pair, you can still get the bloodline for a cheaper price and raise it up those babies from little babies. And even if it doesn't turn out to be as gorgeous as the other ones, you can still produce the gorgeous animals because they have the bloodlines that are capable of producing that. So that's a key tip a lot of people don't see. A lot of people want the real high-end ones, but they fail to realize that its clutch mate might not be as visually appealing, but it's still got the same genetics behind it.
Right, so he could still have high-end babies.
Right.
Like those genetics are there, yeah.
And there might be $1,000 or more price difference between them just because the one's more visually appealing than the other one.
$1,000. I'm trying to get my wife to sign off on like 5 emerald tree skinks, and they're like $45 a piece. She's him on. I'm gonna tell her.
I'll be honest. When I first started, Crested Geckos, their pricing was nowhere near what they are today. Not even close. When I first started, a high end was gonna set you back at the most, and this was right when the bicolors were like sought after. Now you probably get one for that price today still, but it was $250. That was the most you were gonna, and that was a lot of money back then.
I think I was hitting shows at the time, and I was like, seriously? Are you for real right now? Is this thing albino or leucistic or something? Like, what's the difference?
But now there's people that, if you want to get in on a high-end pair that's breeder ready for the season, you'd be prepared a few $1,000s.
Wow,
If you want to be on the top of the line, if you want to make a statement, yeah, it's gonna cost. Especially, a lot of people are like, oh, the males aren't valued as high as the females. A good quality male is going to cost you more than a good quality female, because that male's genetics can be passed down to multiple females in a season. So you're able to make your money back a lot faster.
Now, do you keep, I know there's some breeders that I've talked to already that they keep their, like a male with 2 or 3 females. It sounds like year round. I don't think I got into it that detailed with them, but it looks like year round.
There are some breeders that do that. I personally don't. I usually breed, I'll put them together for a few nights at most. A lot of times they'll lock right away, and I'll separate them.
Okay.
And then they're usually good for the rest of the season. Sometimes towards the mid to late season, I might put them together one more time, but they'll retain the sperm for the entire season without issue.
So now and then, that's about how long they run out. Like you said, 6 months or something, and they run out.
I mean, there have been cases where a year and a half later, the people are like, well, I haven't paired this gecko and it just laid fertile eggs. So they can do it longer.
Okay.
If you're looking at it through a breeder standpoint where you're trying to produce good quality babies, you would definitely want to repair before.
Okay. So what I was thinking is, like, say I'm pairing Payday with, well, Avalanche is a male though, right?
Yeah.
Let's say if Avalanche was a female. Let's say I'm pairing Avalanche and Payday together, okay? Mm-hmm. And then Payday or Avalanche is the female. So I give her 6 months. And now I'm like, I want to pair her with Jim Bob. Will she be out of Payday's seed by then, or would it be best to just wait a year?
That's nobody really knows.
Okay, all right.
In some cases, yeah, but there's not a for sure answer to that. So you're best waiting the entire season. Even make sure she lays. I personally make sure they lay duds, blanks before I'll repair to a different male, just so I'm 100% sure that the genetics and the lineage are lining up.
What do you look for duds? Like, how do you does it take time, or do they just look deflated?
I can recognize them for the most part by just looking at them. They have more of a yellowish hue to them, almost like a leathery look. Not in every case. So you could take a little pen light and you shine through, and they call it the Oreo. You'll see a red circle, and that's a sign of a fertile egg. If you don't see any red ring through the egg, then it's most likely a dud.
So you look at that yolk, right?
Mm-hmm. If you're inexperienced, I still recommend incubating them, just because it can be hard to overlook. So incubate them, and they'll start to mold if they're bad, and then you just toss them at that point.
Okay. Now you said you don't worry about the temperature too much. So what do you do them in, like a little sterilite bin with the clay?
Yeah. The new thing is they take fish tackling boxes, the little plastic.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I've seen those. Yeah.
They're easy to keep the eggs separate and keep everything all into the same rack. But that's what I'll use, and that way you have multiple babies hatching on the same night. Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
That way, if we have multiple babies hatching on the same night, we know who for sure those babies are out of.
Okay, so that's easier just to label them. So you're not like so you wouldn't put like 30 eggs in one bin, and then like, let's see what happens. Okay. So now that it's more organized and it's perfect.
Yep.
But if you really want to see whose eggs they are,
right? Well, that's how it all started, because there was quite a few times where in the beginning I would just incubate them all together, and then there was times where I had 2-3 batches, and that's how I start separating the eggs after that real fast.
Yeah. So say I was a small-time guy who just wanted to check it out, or like my little adopted male, say I got him 2 ladies and I'm breeding. Could I keep, and I don't really care who they came from. I know who they came from, right? So I could feasibly keep all those eggs in one bin, and then they would hatch out weeks apart. Obviously, they would hatch out like 6 weeks apart, basically.
Yep.
Right. So it wouldn't matter. You just take the babies out when they're hatched, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, the only issue with keeping them together when there's that many is to try to keep the lineage straight. But if it's out of the same or you don't care, then it makes no difference.
Yeah. So because I wouldn't. I mean, unless you separate the females after the pairing, or do you just put them one in one? When you're breeding, do you just put them one in one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
All of mine are separated. And that way, you know who's laying what. There's no bullying going on. The females keep their weight better.
Because you're keeping your lines straight, and you want to know who's breeding who.
Yeah, especially the new pairings when they pop out and you got something amazing. You want to know exactly which pairing that one's out of.
Yeah, and keep those breeding. Just get those 2 some little wedding rings. Like, oh no, Ivy wed. You don't have a say in the matter.
Yep, we had
awesome.
We have Blaze and Missy, and Blaze and Missy. Well, Missy's retired now. Missy's almost 14. And then,
wow.
Yeah, they do live a very long time. They were first brought into the U.S., I believe it was in 94. And there's still some of the originals still alive to this day.
From 94?
Yep. So nobody knows exactly how long they live because since they've been imported, there's still some of the originals that are alive today.
Well, they were adults when they came probably, right? Or like
most likely.
We don't know how old they were because they were wild caught.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so they do. They're commitments. They're definitely a commitment.
Well, I'm glad I'm keeping mine in good shape. I have like a year's worth of food for him right now because I went nuts trying to see what he liked. So, because what do you feed? What do you feed, by the way?
I rotate my foods. So I'll feed all the different flavors of Pangea.
Okay.
And Rapashi. Those are my 2. And then Ariel Kuda, he's got a diet that he makes. It's kefir and there's fruit. And he's got like all these little ingredients that I'll blend up and they really go crazy for that. And I'll use that occasionally. But
how do you spell that? I'm going to put that in the comments. How do you spell that?
Ariel Kuda. His last name is Cudia. And he's the one that created we call it the Ariel Kuda diet.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. It's his diet, right?
Mm-hmm. And it works awesome. But I like to keep a variety. That way, if I sell a gecko to somebody, they're not contacting me a couple weeks later. My gecko doesn't like this. My gecko won't eat this. So they've been exposed to the majority of foods. There's Black Panther diet. There's multiple ones that I'll throw into the rotation just so they don't get set on the same flavor or the same brand.
Yeah, it took me a while to get mine off of Pangea watermelon. It took me a while to get him to eat anything else, and now he's like, oh, this is nice, this is different, this is good. But it's all just Pangea.
Yeah, watermelon Pangea, that seems to be a crowd favorite. It sure does. Especially with the smaller ones, I've noticed. The bigger ones don't seem to go as crazy as the little ones. The little ones chow down on that. I
wonder if they want that energy, like it's got a higher sugar content or something. I'm a fan of watermelon, so I didn't think anything of it, but then I wanted them to have a variety, you know. I'm going to open the floor. I'm kind of out of questions for you personally about crested geckos. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Like I asked you before the show to think of maybe some pro tips that might not have been intuitive to you, but you came up with over the years.
Just as far as the tips go, if you're looking to set out to be a breeder of high-end geckos, the best thing you can do to get the most bang for your buck is start small. Get the tiny little babies, grow them up because they'll change so much throughout the growing period. You might end up with that dynamite gecko. And even if you don't end up with that dynamite gecko, you still have a gecko who has the bloodlines to produce those dynamite animals. So that's one key thing. A lot of people think that you have to fork out all this money if you want to have high-end animals, and that's not the case whatsoever.
Okay.
Another thing you could do is you could fork out the big money and you could buy the best of the best male and maybe some mid-range females who are out of good genetics. You could still end up producing some dynamite babies that way. But structure is easy to breed in once you are familiar with working with the lines. It's probably one of the easiest things to breed in. So if you have a high-end animal that has dynamite contrast and amazing pattern, but it's lacking in structure, go ahead and pair that with one that's going to complement it, with that's got that dynamite structure. So you'll end up with a lot of the babies, the structure will be fine, and even if they're not, a generation down from them, and the structure is pretty easy to be incorporated back into the gecko. And
I'm just going to throw this out. This is a part of the show where I trademark and copyright something. So Dynamite Cresties for when I start breeding next year. Copyright trademark. I got it. So nailed it. Somebody wants to buy it for $45. It's all yours. That's how I make my payday. That's a good tip. That's a good tip to start with the babies. So your investment is more time than money.
It
if
is.
you have the money, you could invest in adults that you know they're dynamite already.
And that's how I started. I got really lucky, and right when tricolors were just starting to hit, I ended up, there was a local breeder and he was selling out his entire collection. And believe it or not, I passed on Blaze, who he's a very well-known tricolor still to this day. I passed on him the first time, and I went for the bicolor. So everybody laughs about that. But thankfully, when I came back for the second round, he still had Blaze, and I got him. He was around 20-some grams at the time.
Okay.
And there's a few other breeders working with tricolors, but there were still few and far between. So I got him, and I will be completely honest with you, I don't think I would have the name, and I wouldn't be who I am today. And
without that one gecko?
Without that one gecko.
That's correct. I think it's funny that you're naming geckos like they're celebrities. Like Blaze is awesome, and Payday has his own line of shoes, and like it's just cool that they're well known.
It's funny because you could. Well, today I had a lot of people inquire because somebody posted. There's a group on Facebook that called "What's My Gecko Worth?"
Okay.
And one of Blaze and Missy's grandbabies was posted. So my Facebook has been blowing up. Do you have any of that line? Do you have any of that line? Because people were quoting $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on this gecko. They're saying he's priceless.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I mean, he's a gorgeous animal. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He's a very gorgeous animal. But I produced his dad. That's it. I didn't produce him, but just his dad's out of Blaze and Missy. And that's so everybody wants that Blaze and Missy line because they're trying to produce something similar to him.
So that's like, I know the leopard geckos, there's like two guys that like run, you want the genetics from their lines. It's like, now I can't think of either of their names, and I had one in my head. Do you know what I'm talking about? Tremper's one, and I don't remember the name of the other guy. But like Tremper albino was the thing with leopard geckos. They were two breeders, but not like, there weren't lines. Like you didn't know I never heard of a famous leopard gecko. And I was into them, but not like, I wasn't breeding really, but I was into leopard geckos at the time.
But the difference is between the cresteds and the leopards is like a leopard morph. They're all basically valued the same price. I mean, granted, you'll have a sex difference with valuation and you'll have a size difference, but they're pretty much a morph has a right around the price range. With the cresteds, there's no two that are the same. So you can have two extreme harlequins and they could look nowhere near each other. So like I said, you can have a $50 extreme harlequin or a $5,000, or in that one's case, they're getting crazy quotes of 10,000 plus extreme harlequins. So
who is quoting that? I want to know who's quoting that. Like, who is the judge?
People do get it. There are people I know personally. I don't know if they want me to release their names, but
all right, that's fine. That's fine.
I know quite a few breeders who have gotten very large sums of money. I've been offered $7,000 for Payday. There's other breeders who have gotten offers of $10,000 and $15,000 for some of their breeders. And I'll be honest, especially when you're getting these huge offers, even though you put all that time and effort into it, money talks. So that's why a lot of the nicest geckos that were produced in America are now residing in Korea because they pay a lot higher than the American market. 5 times plus the American market.
Yeah, what can you can't say no to that. Like,
It's
they're
it's
paying
hard
in
to
US
resist.
dollars, right?
It's hard to resist.
That's US dollars. That's not whatever. That pays the bills for sure.
It does, and it was hard for me to turn it down, but you also have to think of it as a business on a business side, especially a real high end male who's consistently produces high end stuff. In one given season, you can make a substantial amount of money. So it might $5,000 might seem like a big investment, but when that animal can produce 5 times that in a season alone, they could definitely make their money back as a business standpoint. I got into this as a hobby, so
Yeah.
but
It sounds
so
like the care of your animals comes first, and then
it does.
the
It
money's
does.
nice, but it's not the format.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of the breeders out there that pump them up and get them breeding quick, they have different intentions in mind.
Sure. And those are the people I like personally to steer clear. That's not the animal you want. They're going to have probably poor genetics, poor just being raised in a weird like factory environment, basically, like a puppy mill.
Thankfully, the Crested Geckos, a lot of the breeders in the Crested Geckos, I'm friends with most of them. They really care about the health of their animals, and the ones that don't last too long. They'll come in and they get ran out pretty quick.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like the community kind of keeps track of each other. This is a little off our topic. I'm gonna go to Q&A, and then I want to see your other stock that you brought. You brought some treats for us to see. So, does anybody have any questions in the audience right now for Brandi about Crested Geckos or breeding Crested Geckos, or they want to contact her to buy a Crested Gecko? What do we want to do? We know she won't take 5,000, so you're gonna have to up it. You're gonna have to up it on that guy.
I do have lower end stock. That's not common to get a $5,000 gecko.
Well, looking on your site, even you had like, I think 300 was the biggest one you had on when I checked the site.
Yeah, I think the last one that was, I think he's off there now. There was one that was over 1,000, but he just sold. For the most part, especially this time of year, they're on the lower end side. Now in the fall, and you'll notice this with a lot of breeders, in the fall, that's when they go through their holdbacks. So that's when you have the opportunity of getting the best stuff at the best prices is in the fall. That's when the breeders make their tough cuts on who's staying and who's going.
Okay, that's good advice. That's good in the fall. I might have some money by then. If Biden cuts us another check, I'm in.
Yeah, I noticed a lot. There's a lot of people getting in on it since the.
Absolutely.
It's funny because as soon as those stimuluses hit, the inboxes are going.
Yep. I set up my. We just had a guy come to fix my electric today, kind of rewire my whole house, and I said I need some boxes here, and here, because this is where we're gonna have stuff here, and here, ready to go. So for vivariums and whatever else. So nobody has any questions. So let's get to what you've got. Let's see. We've got a lychee. Did you say?
I didn't bring a lychee. I don't have lychees anymore, but I do have I brought. Now these guys are spazzes.
Okay.
But this is a white collar Saracenorum.
Okay.
They're also New Caledonian species.
I love those spots, and that V on his head is really cool.
He's a really nice one. I just recently acquired him. He's going to be a future breeder. And
what's the hair like on those guys? Like, is it pretty much the same as Cresties?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they look faster. They look a lot faster than a Crested.
They're a lot faster, and you pretty much have the white collar, which I just showed, and then they have like a normal. They don't come in many fancy colors or varieties.
What's a normal? Just they don't have the white collar or the spots?
Yeah, they're pretty much all brown. They're kind of black. Okay. They kind of look, like a brown crestless crested. That's how best to describe it.
Okay. Bah.
And then, I don't know if you could see this guy.
Oh, this is gargoyle, right?
Yep, that's a gargoyle.
No, that's a young one because they get kind of big, don't they?
Oh, they get real big, yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize how big they got. I thought they stayed. I've only seen them at shows. I've seen juveniles. So I didn't realize they get like the size of my hand. Their body is big.
And the thing with the gargoyles, well, Morgan, my little cousin, she's the gargoyle expert.
Yeah.
They get pretty ginormous, and they're her favorites because she says they're fat and lazy. So
We've got a couple of them. Okay.
They're not as jumpy as the Cresteds.
Really?
Now, I've had some jumpy gargs, but the good thing about the gargoyles is when they're done, and they'll start barking at you, and you're like, okay, we'll put you away now. They're very vocal.
Okay. Oh, this one you're getting out. You must be chill.
She usually is, but they had a. This is
a chewy.
Yeah, this is a PI chewy.
Okay, what's a PI chewy?
A Pine Island. There's the mainland chewies and the Pine Islands. The Pine Islands get bigger.
Okay.
And they usually are more colorful.
Where is she at in age? Like, is she full grown?
Yeah, she is definitely full grown. And
okay, so chewies don't get as big as I thought they did.
No, lychees are the ones that get the ginormous size.
Okay.
But she's.
I just like that. I like that camouflage.
Me too.
I think that's a really cool look. Like if you got some cool lichen branches to put in with her, she would look awesome.
Yeah, she's really chill. She's a real sweetheart. But they're all pretty amped up because I packaged them all up and we took a car ride, so they're not.
They're like cats. They're like, dude, there's another fire.
Yeah, they're definitely not happy at all. And we had to go down a couple gravel roads where they were bumping all through. I was like, I hope nobody loses their tails.
That's funny.
But
that's funny.
The cool thing about like the gargoyles, one thing about them is if they do lose their tail, they will grow back.
Oh, that's cool too.
Yeah, and the Cresteds, once they lose it, it's gone.
Honestly, the price on any gargoyle is what keeps me from getting them. Like they're pretty pricey just for the average.
You want to hear the funniest thing about the gargoyles is I think I had 5 or 6 breeding, and I'd bring them to the shows, and nobody knew what they were. I couldn't sell them. Had them $50 for nice ones.
What?
They didn't sell. And this is, you could look up, even with the chewies, the market 5, 6, 7 years ago, in the market today, it's like night and day. The gargoyles, on average, would bring between 50, and your real top of the line gargoyles would be 100, 150 at the baby size.
Now you can't get a crappy one. I almost said a swear. I almost said my first swear of the night. You can't get a crappy one for $150.
Right, you could probably get a crappy one for $150, but
but then you've got a crappy one. Like, who wants a crappy lizard for their awesome setup?
You could get a mid-grade, decent one for about $250, but you're gonna have to grow them up for a few years before you're gonna be able to. If you're looking,
I would just want one. I just want one because they're awesome. So they're just cool. So I'll have to talk to you later. I just think they're cool. Like, what size enclosure would you need for a gargoyle?
Gargoyles, probably 20 would be minimum, I would say.
Okay.
20-ish.
They don't high?
No, see, they're not as big of a climbers as the Cresteds are.
Okay.
I mean, they do climb, but they're not like the Cresteds enjoy their height. They really enjoy their height. Yeah. The gargoyles mostly stay on the bottom or the mid range. They're not as big as the Cresteds are on the height goes. What's
their setup like? Like, are they New Caledonian too, or no?
All the ones today are New Caledonian geckos, and there's a couple other ones. The Leachianus, which I don't have here today. There's the Trachees, which they're super rare. There's not many people in the hobby. I don't even think in the U.S. that there's maybe 1 or 2 people I know in the U.S. that even have them. They're really neat. They're a New Caledonian species. They actually are live bearers. And they only have 2 babies a year, which
you're paying for those.
They're very, very expensive and very, very rare.
Okay.
The Urodactyloids, there's a few different types of them. The most common are Agricolae and the Viardae. They're the little ones. They stay really tiny, but they're really underrated. They get about the size of your finger, but they're real chill geckos. Real chill geckos.
Really? Okay.
Yep, and they're all pretty much the same care as the Cresteds.
That's so cool because they're just so easy. I don't know why anyone wouldn't get them. Like, if you want a lizard that's so easy, like they're even easier than leopard geckos. And leopard geckos, all you need is a heat mat, basically, and they're good to go. So I think that's pretty much all I have for you tonight. I had one other thing I wanted to ask you. Okay, so the RHAC, Rhactastic Rhacs. What is the Rhacs part? What does that mean? It's Latin.
Well, Rhactaculatus, their crested geckos used to be known as that.
Okay.
And then they changed their scientific name. So that's why we joke around with me. But it was supposed to be like a spinoff of Fantastic. So
well, that I get.
Rhactastic Rhacs.
So Rhacs comes from Rhactaculatic.
Rhactaculatus is what your chewies are. It's what your gargoyles are. They're part in the crested gecko. Also used to be as of 3 or 4 years ago. They're no longer considered Rhacs, but they used to be considered Rhacs.
They're not in there, so that's kind of like in isopods, like the Cubaris.
Yes, just
Cubaris
like that.
Are now being maybe thought of as Murinella.
Yep.
The duckies, I think. Yeah, they're thinking that the duckies are Murinella and not even Cubaris anymore. So
yeah, I see that, and I'm like, are you kidding? But yeah, so it kind of sucks for me because at that point in time when they decided they were no longer Rhacs, most of my collection I had strayed away from the other species and got mostly into the crested. So it's kind of funny that it all took place like that.
And it's too late to change your name, like you already know.
Yeah,
so.
I thought about it, but I'm like, yeah, I got a nice base now.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can't change it. Everybody knows who you are. It's not like they're not going to know. And then when you have other stuff available, it's on your site as well. It's not just Cresteds. I noticed it was just Cresteds when I looked. That was like not even a week ago.
Yep. Usually in the fall is when the list is going to be pretty high. Right now, I only have a handful available. And the last 2 seasons with me, like I said, have been really slow going. My dad had passed away last year, and the year before that we had the fire. So it's been slow the past 2 seasons, but usually there's on a good, like this season, hopefully, once fall hits, we should see 20, 30 geckos up there, different species at a given time.
That's awesome. Now, are you going to be, last question, are you going to be at the show in June in Schaumburg? I think it's in June, right?
They changed it to Schaumburg. I'm not going to be. If I do, it's just going to be to attend. I can't get the time off right now to vend. Even though I was hoping to, and this is one of the few NARBCs that have tables still available.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, the pandemic's just crushed a lot of hobbyists. So, well, hopefully we'll see you there. I'm going to be there taking pictures, maybe a little bit of video to post up here, just because it's going to be a zoo. I think people are just dying to go, and hopefully we'll meet up with some people.
Yeah, a lot
from
of
the channel and the show.
A lot of the local shows have been crazy packed. I think people are itching to get their fix.
Absolutely, because it's been a year. All last year was canceled, so I think this year is going to be a good time to sell. So bring some stuff in your backpack and just kind of.
Actually, I've seen quite a few people do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of those people. Or you buy something from this table and then sell it at this table. It's kind of fun. So that's all. Thanks so much for coming. I think we learned a lot today. I learned a lot today. I hope the audience learned something.
Thanks for having me.
We had Fred Durst in here today. I don't know if you saw.
No.
Yeah, Fred Durst is in here. And Licky Manuts showed in. So, yeah, I don't know. This is probably just trolls, but that's the first time. Nobody had any questions. I'm kind of shocked. But so that's all we have. So thanks so much for coming, Brandi. It was awesome. I had a great time. All right. We'll see you soon. Hopefully you can make the chat tonight on ISO Buddies. If not, that's fine. That's totally fine. So have a great night. All right. Have a safe trip home on the gravel roads with your poor geckos. Thanks a lot. That was awesome. So I had a great time with Brandi. I don't know if you could tell. So if you haven't done it already, hit like, hit subscribe. Check that little bell icon so you know when we have another one on Tuesdays. Next week, we're going to be broadcasting on Monday. It's going to be a live feed from on site. So we're going to visit my friend Kyle Sterling, who actually got my Crested Gecko through. He has, I don't know how to explain it, like a mini zoo of reptiles and a couple other things in his house, in his family basement. So his parents have let him turn about half of their basement into a mini zoo of all kinds of reptiles, all kinds of great stuff. So we're going to go check that out live on site on Monday, the 10th. Okay. So hopefully you can make it. If not, obviously it'll be up here anyway. So thanks for coming. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Thanks again, ISO buddies. Peace out. And there's the end.